Well, welcome everybody to the Almond Board of California's Training Tuesday webinar series part 5. This one will be on NRCS incentives, opportunities for almond growers. This webinar today will run until 9:30 a.m. and we will hear from Almond Board of California, Natural Resources Conservation Service of California, American Farmland Trust, and the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District. Before we get to the information, we'll go through a little housekeeping. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. Participants will remain muted throughout the webinar session, but can ask questions through the chat. If you are unfamiliar with Teams, that is up on the upper left-hand side on the icon that looks like the chat feature. You can also, at the end, when we do allow people to unmute themselves, you can raise your hand. If you're unfamiliar where that is the icon right next to the first icon where it has the smiley face with the hand raised. Again, the easiest way is probably to type your message into the chat feature. We will be monitoring the chat, and then we'll have them read out at the end of the webinar, and each presenter can answer accordingly. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get to today's information. I will hand it over to ABC's own Jesse Roseman. Jesse, it is all yours.
All right, thanks, Taylor, and thanks to everybody that's joining online or will be watching this later. Today's Training Tuesday is on NRCS and various opportunities for growers to take advantage of all the services that NRCS offers. And speaking today, we've got myself. I'm a principal analyst at the Almond Board of California. Then we'll have Gail Berry. She's the Deputy State Conservationist for NRCS. Then Paul Lum, who's an agricultural specialist with American Farmland Trust, and Trina Wally, with programs coordinator with the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District. And I really appreciate all of our speakers today. We'll really cover the gamut from how to get started with NRCS and what programs and practices are available to what other programs are available through partners that are working with NRCS on regional grants that are really focused on practices that are tailored for almond growers. And because several of those regional grants are focused on soil health, I just wanted to say a little bit about that practice and the benefits that it could have in your orchard. We, the Almond Board, have been investing in research and specifically for soil health for quite some time. Our research program's been going for over 40 years. And just recently, we've been investing very heavily in how do these soil health practices, things like cover crops, compost, or whole orchard recycling, provide benefits to you, the grower. And I'll talk at the end about how there's also a role for these practices to play in new carbon markets and how growers can actually get some benefits from participating in those programs. But I really first just wanted to walk through some of the resources that we have that explain the benefits of these practices. We have a variety of guides available at the Almond Board that cover these practices. We have a cover crop best management practices guide, and some of the benefits that you might see are improving pollinator habitat or water infiltration, just as an example, or potentially getting some nutrients out of the cover crops. And then compost. This is best covered in our nitrogen guide. And as you can see over here on the right, one of the advantages of compost is that it's slower releasing, or could be a disadvantage if you need that nitrogen immediately. But by building your soil, you can improve soil composition and structure, and also improve water holding capacity, which is really critical right now as we're in the multi-year drought. Next guide is one on whole orchard recycling, and in the San Joaquin Valley, there's a planned phase out of ag burning. We used to be able to send some of the trees that were removed from orchards to cogeneration plants. That has largely gone away, and the practice of infield burning is also now going to phase out. So whole orchard recycling provides a great opportunity for managing trees at when that orchard is removed. And our research has also shown that it improves yield, increases soil carbon and nitrogen and organic matter, and then also helps with water holding capacity. So certainly some trends here in across these various soil health practices in terms of the benefits that it provides. So then the most recent guide that we've completed is the groundwater recharge guide. And really what this is focused on is addressing a future of declining groundwater quality, quantity, and availability. By doing groundwater recharge, we know that we can help address Sigma and Sigma compliance and do everything we can, or everything that's in our power, to improve aquifers and groundwater supplies. So this guide really covers from start to finish how you as a grower can think about groundwater recharge and figure out whether it's a good fit for you. So again, encourage you to check out any of these guides to learn more about the practices that we'll be talking about today that NRCS provides cost share funding for. Next slide. And then there are also advantages from a carbon storage point of view from all of these practices. And we know that the marketplace is and the Almond Board is also looking to figure out how can we best position growers to take advantage of these carbon benefits, including incentives or through markets. And if next slide. If you look at California's goals, they've increasingly incorporated working lands as part of their carbon strategy, and how California would like to reduce emissions. And we know that whole orchard recycling stores carbon. And in fact, all of these soil health practices have carbon benefits. So in addition to the agronomic benefits of water infiltration or improved nutrition, it also has this additional benefit that, again, the Almond Board is exploring and along with other groups, how can we best get benefits, including monetary benefits, back to growers for the trees that they're growing and storing carbon throughout their lifespan. So next slide, Taylor. So thank you. And with that, I want to introduce our next speaker. Gail Berry with NRCS is going to be talking, I think, about the ways that growers can really get involved in NRCS and some of these practice standards that are available and the advantages of working with NRCS. So with that, Gail, I'm going to hand it over to you, and thanks for being with us this morning.
Oh, thank you so much, Jesse and Taylor and Mark and the whole Almond Board community, the partners we have online, and most importantly, the growers that are online. I love the title that you gave us, Jesse, was Demystifying the NRCS process. You know, We are a federal agency, and we're really proud of the work we do. We have 56 offices out there around California, around the nation, really. And they service local producers, but we are also, we're a scientific technical agency. We have a lot to provide you, but we're also a people agency, right? So all of our planners have different levels of expertise, but we train them in all of this. And hopefully my goal today is when we leave here that you know a little bit more about us, how we do our work, and that you feel more comfortable coming into the office or calling or email and approaching us and saying, hey, can you help? That simple statement will get you started with NRCS, and we want to be a partner with you and the folks online, the conservation districts, American Farmland Trust, and many others out there who are working on conservation. So with that, Jesse, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As you said, I'm Gail Berry. I'm the Deputy State Conservationist for NRCS here in California. For those of you who know our State Conservationist, Carlos Suarez, he's sorry he couldn't be with us today, but we're also having our State Technical Advisory Committee at the same time. So we take input from growers and grower groups like yours to make our products better. So I'm going to really hit, since this is Training Tuesday, I'm going to hit on two things really that by the end of this presentation that I want you to know about. One is really the roadmap. The slides up now. I'll go through that in detail of how we work and how best to work with us. And then some top conservation practices that almond growers could or might want to adopt. Jesse hit on some of the big ones I'm going to be talking about and the most common ones that we see almond growers asking for, but there's 164 conservation practices. So, you know, there's a lot of options when we come out to do your personalized conservation plan. And Jesse, I see a question, but are we going to take questions at the end? I don't want to be rude to our guests here.
Yeah, Mike, I see you have a question, and we'll address that at the end. And I'll give you a time to talk.
Okay, great, thanks. And so write down your question. We don't want you to forget. So thanks, Taylor, for getting the first slide up. So this is really the big picture overview of how we work in NRCS. It's all the way from our planning phase, our conservation planning phase, which we really think is the bread and the butter, how we came about as an agency, why our agency is important, all the way through the financial assistance, eligibility, which are really important, and then finally implementing, because that's going to help change your particular piece of the world that you're the steward over. So this conservation plan, which is step one, it really anchors all of our services and is the starting point. And we recognize that sometimes funding opportunity is you know, happens somewhere along this line, and we're often doing steps 1, 2, 3 at the same time. Sometimes a partner will come in with funding, and that's okay. We want to work with you locally to make this as easy on you as partners, and we want to work together so that we can all meet our common objectives of increasing conservation in California. So this step is, you know, really, we're going to talk about 3 main buckets, which is the planning piece, the technical assistance, which is the knowledge that we share, and then the financial assistance, which is how we can make it happen. So with that, I'll walk you through each of these steps. Taylor? So conservation planning is our first step. And we really, you know, we really see conservation planning as our bread and butter, as I said, and we're starting to call it personalized conservation planning because it's only for you. What works for your neighbor, what works for your relatives that maybe are doing something specific might not work on your place. You guys all know soil can be different, the weather patterns can be different, you know, the resources that you have can be different. So we look at that all with you. We go out to your place and we look at it site specific, and it's based to your needs. I mean, what better way to do something that's personalized to where you are in this journey? Our technical assistance is voluntary, which is really big to a lot of farmers and ranchers out there. You have to come in and ask us to enter into this relationship with you. We come at your invitation. It's confidential. This is codified in law in the Farm Bill. And so we are prohibited to share your information with anybody. And so whatever you tell us, whatever happens out there in the planning process, that's protected under that the Farm Bill law. And it's all provided at no charge, which is awesome because we have engineers. We've got a few online that'll be ready to help us in the Q&As. Um, we have one, drunk. We have agronomists like Rob Roy and Karen Lowell who really have a deep understanding and background in this. We have soil scientists who look at your soil. We have biologists. We have cultural resource specialists and compliance specialists that help us all to keep in line with what's going on here in California. The planning process also really helps us identify the resource concerns, what you're worried about, what you've seen in your place as you walk across the fields, as you plant the trees, as you try to increase soil health in your place. And we like to use this acronym called SWAPA plus HE. And that really stands for, we look at the soil, we look at the water, we look at the air. Air quality is really super important, as you know, in California. We look at the plants, how they're growing, where they're growing, some of the patterns. Animals, if you have some animals, and I might have got the two A's mixed up, but you get the point. And then also it's, as we talked about earlier, it's the human component, and we're also looking at energy because we hear a lot of concerns and people want some information and some technical assistance on that. So the end goal of this is really to improve your resource concerns, and those are site specific and to you, which is really why we love the planning process. And we recommend you start here, whether it's us or the conservation district, or there's some people out there who do this for other organizations or do this professionally. Having a plan, as you know, I don't think you can be an almond grower and not have a plan about where you're heading. And so we want to help you with the resource concern part of that. And it's really that plan will help us guide the scope of the application, because sometimes we get money into different pots throughout the year. And so if we have that plan, then we can help guide and direct you. Next slide. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the eligibility because, this is part of the demystifying. So now you have your plan, or you're working on one, and that can be big, especially if it's a whole farm plan. And now, if you want to seek some financial assistance, especially through us, but I think the partners use a lot of the processes as we use too. The next step is to submit your application and ensure that your business, and your land are eligible for this financial assistance. We like to talk about our money as a cost share. I know many times you'll hear the terms grants. Maybe it's just a term of art, but we say cost share because we feel like we're in this together with you. And so we pay a certain percentage and you pay a certain percentage, and then we can get the conservation on the ground. So you'll see a couple things that are key on this slide that you'll need when you come into the offices. Our offices are open by appointment. We're going to be starting to have our staff go back early May, and they're always available for your service. So whether you make an email appointment, or you call, or you ask us to come in, or as the offices start to open, drop by and say hi to get the process started. You'll need an official tax ID, which is a social security number, or an employer ID, a property deed or lease agreement to show that you have control for the property for the life of the conservation practice, and a farm tract number. And as you know, we're co-located with FSA, or we can point you to an FSA office, and you need your farm tract number from them to get you started. But we work very close together, and we'll help you through that. So that's what you need. So what does your land need? Oh, sorry, I'm not done with you yet. So what do you need? Yeah, you need to be an individual, or an entity, or a joint operation. I know for our farm in Montana, Um, I didn't tell you this when we first started, but one of the things, my dad farmed for many years, and we still have the farm, and my brother has worked off farm and then came on farm now to take over. And he says, "You guys are so confusing." And how to get started. So I think, as we work through that paperwork as a family and we think about these things as a family, hopefully my thoughts guide you through that. So, you need to be an individual entity or joint operations. I know there's a lot of ways out there, farm families codify their joint operations. You need to produce or sell agricultural products. We are the Department of Agriculture, and we're focused on helping agriculture producers. People applying for our environmental quality incentives program, forest land is assistance or exempt from this. We think it's really important that we help with private landowners with forest land management. And so that provision was made for the agency. You have to have control of the land for the life of the proposed contract. You need to be in compliance with highly erodible land and wetland provisions. Those have been in effect since the 1985 Farm Bill. So you should all be familiar with that. If you're not, the local office can really help you with that. You need to meet the adjusted gross income requirements of the Farm Bill. You need to have an interest in the farming operation associated with the land being enrolled. I know there's a lot of people out there that lease, so we can talk about leasing in the Q&As if you're interested in that. And you need to be in good standing with all terms, with all terms of other active USDA contracts, because we know you might come in for one thing, or you can't do your whole farm plan all at once, and so you're going to bite it off in chunks, and you need to be in good standing implementing and working through those. Next slide. So here's the part I was really excited about, your land. So your land, if you're going to enroll in our flagship program, which we're going to talk about next, is our Environmental Quality Incentives Program. It needs to, again, be used for ag, livestock, or forest production, or be capable of growing trees. Needs to be privately owned. Now, we do some public land eligibility in the EQIP that was given to us in a farm bill if the land is leased or rented to an eligible agriculture producer. And you can't double dip, basically. And I think that's pretty true for all the agencies that I've talked to on my level. You can't receive the same kind of money for the same kind of practice for USDA on the same piece of land. So that's pretty easy there. Sometimes steps take longer than you think on that when you're starting up the paperwork. So after you do the first one, it always feels to me as a farm family that it goes a little faster, and maybe it's just because I get used to the paperwork and the forms. But if you haven't started with us yet, I urge you to just, even if it's not for a program that you're interested in or any particular cost share, come on into the office or email or call and get started on the forms, especially with FSA and us, so that you can have those in place when something of interest comes in. And another big part that I want to say here is if something changes in your farming operation, someone passes, you change ownership, you go to a different LLC, you change the name by one word in the LLC, you need to let the office know. So just keep the office updated on all your business transactions at the time it happens, and you should be good with that. Next, I want to get into ranking, and a lot of people think this is the kind of behind the curtains thing, because you've come out, your planners talk to you, a partner talked to you, you know what you want to do, you have your goals, you know what you want to focus on, and now it comes into the office and we run it through a ranking process. We think, we've looked at a lot of different models nationally, and there's not a lot of different options for how you're going to decide who gets money in any one year and who doesn't. You can always do first come, first serve. That doesn't seem to be fair. So in NRCS, we rank applications, and we do that in what's called a batching period. And these are periods, so we take applications constantly, but periodically we batch all the applications that we have and we rank them. So any applications that we have at that time of batching, we rank them for funding. The criteria that are used to rank the application are tailored to the specifics related to a particular fund pool. So like this last time we had money for cover crops. So we would tailor the ranking criteria to select out those cover crop applications that came in that had the highest potential for conservation benefit. Other examples of fund pools are targeted air quality. We'll talk a little bit about that. Water conservation, which is super important right now. And as I said, cover crops. Next slide. So now we're to the last part and the kind of fun part, because you get to see all those other things happen, and it's hard to see the tangible part of it. But this is where you can see some of the benefits come in. And so this is implementing your conservation practice. So yeah, just double checking myself here. And this is really the hard part, right? Because this takes a lot of people out there helping you, a lot of thinking through what you want to do, and then sometimes you run up against things as you're starting to implement. So here's how it works. When an application is selected for funding, then your conservation planner will use what we call a conservation practice standard. And I'm going to go through a couple of the popular ones next, but those are written out that we've worked with university, we've worked with scientists, we've worked with others to make sure that it's the best science available to help you implement that. And it spells out exactly what you will need to document, and we'll show you how to verify that you have completed any given practice and receive payment for that work. One important thing, and I can't stress this enough, is that you must not begin the work for which you have requested funding until you have signed the contract. So that's kind of your big flag there. And in the past few slides, I've given you the 10,000-foot view of how it works when you're applying for financial assistance for NRCS for your conservation goals. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about some of the practices and then some of our programs. So we'll walk through those next. Some of our big programs, and I just want you guys to know that these are funded by the Farm Bill. And the names change. The names change every 5 years as we get new programs, and then sometimes initiatives are created. And so administrations come in and they have focus on something like climate smart agriculture and some of those things, and it allows us to take some of these core programs to meet those goals. Probably our best known and our biggest program, especially here in California, and we call it our flagship program, is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. And if you've heard of a program, that's probably the one that you're most familiar with. Again, this is not a grant, this is a cost share. It's something that we enter into jointly with you. And it will provide you the financial assistance that comes with our technical assistance to address your resource concerns and deliver your environmental benefits. That's really it in a nutshell. I like to call this our Fix It program. Projects based on ranking and available funding, we often run out of funding before we meet all the needs, which is why we're so happy in California to have lots of options and lots of partners to help with additional funding. And you're going to learn a little bit more about that here in the next couple speakers. Our contract length is typically 2 to 3 years, and the payment is completed once we've certified that practice that I talk about. We get about 80 million plus or minus a year in this pot of money every year. So we're going through this process constantly. And sometimes we do 2 rankings a year, and sometimes we only do 1. You can't receive any more than $450,000 per Farm Bill cycle. So that's 5 years. So every 5 years resets the clock when Congress signs a new Farm Bill. We've got some other opportunities in California. Last year, we had a big pilot that we did here, and we did a lot of press on the conservation incentives contract. This year, we don't have as much money, so we're focusing on cropland management. And the payment limitation on that is, in addition to the EQIP, is 200,000 per Farm Bill cycle. So it's really exciting, and it's we look at it as a progression. So EQIP is a fix it. CIC is you take the next step. It doesn't have to be whole farm, and it provides you some options to different enhancements. And then next slide we get to where we hope we're all getting, and where we hope you want to go to, is our conservation stewardship program. So this is a tough program for us here in California. We're working really hard to get some enhancements that meet California growers' needs. And we're going to talk about the innovation that we do here in NRCS in our next slides. But this really helps you take that your farm to the highest level. Maybe you're already there. So, if you've worked with us in the past and you've done a lot of things and you think, wow, I look around and I'm one of the best stewards in my community, in my neighborhood, maybe this program is for you. So reach out to your planner and see what you can do on that. The information is on there. And Jesse, I think we're making these slides available along with the handout. So you guys will have access to that today. We also have other ways that we provide money that Congress has allowed through the Farm Bill. One is called the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. You're going to hear a lot about that today, and we're really excited about the opportunities that provides for focused conservation, for additional conservation practices. And then we have the Conservation Innovation Grants. And the Conservation Innovation Grants, as we who work the land know, um, conservation is always evolving. The land is always evolving. The challenges we face are always evolving. So conservation integration grants allows partners like Almond Board, Nature Conservancy, American Farmland Trust, conservation districts, others, to really try some things out and innovate on a pilot level to see if it's something that the agency wants to adopt for a future conservation plan. So ask your conservation planner if you have any of that in your area, in your county, in your community, and they can tell you what's going on. Next slide. The process, we are a federal agency. I was telling staff this, so they kind of laugh at me, but I always tell staff when they get really disappointed about the process is that in federal agencies, the paperwork gods must be honored. So we do have a public process that we're accountable to with public funds. We work closely with partners like the Almond Board, American Farmland Trust, resource conservation districts are a key partner for us, and many others to bring the best opportunities to California farmers and ranchers. We evaluate what we learn from our customers, and we advocate for conservation practices and funding vehicles that serve you. We found it helpful to round out discussions of financial assistance with a few basic reminders here. So one, these are public funds. The Farm Bill directs us how to use those. That language is codified in law. It's not something we can change, but it's something that we have a responsibility to tell you where the boundaries are and help you work through the process. The specific laws guide us, our planners, on how we can deliver the funds, and we'll have those discussions with you. We'll tell you where those are. And accountability. We're accountable to the taxpayers that have given us all funding, that see the importance of food and fiber for our nation. And so we have to do a lot of reports that I won't bore you with, but we're asking our planners to do that. So if you see them busy working away on some paperwork, it's probably for me and Carlos. So make your planner aware of a timeline. So if I know as we're going into drought, people are really concerned about water and people want to move quickly, right? You want to get your irrigation systems in place. So it's hard for us to move quickly sometimes, especially if they're bigger practices. So let your planner know your timeline and what you've got going on, and we'll move as quickly as you can. But that's one of the things that, going back to that planning, if we have that plan, then we can help you stage out the timing. So now let's move to the conservation practices. Jesse had some good ones for you, so I won't go into a lot of what he said, but we don't use the term best management practices. I know that's kind of out there, that a lot of people use it, but we call it conservation practice standards. These are time tested, they're specific to agriculture, they're updated every 5 years, and we're constantly creating new practices when you let us know what you need. Like I said earlier, there's 164 conservation practices that we have. We're going to only cover 4 today. So water use, efficient use for irrigation, water management. This is, a big one this year. And I know you guys are all worried about it. We're worried about it too for you, and we're asking ourselves how we can help you. So we think of things in really two buckets in our conservation practices. One is structural practices. So these are things like equipment upgrades, structures to manage sediment or deliver water, things like irrigation systems to allow optimal management, like flow meters, weather stations, other things we think of as management practices. So once you have the structural practices in place, then you need to learn how to manage the timing of the water, manage what you're seeing out there on the land. Um, these management practices help you use your structural practices optimally, and they might also include equipment, but it's more like how to use it and make sure that you're consistently using it over time. But some examples might include soil moisture sensors and timers for irrigation application. But a timer is only as good as the person operating it, right? And what you need to do to, as you look on the landscape and you notice how dry or wet your plants are. The next few slides give you a quick look at some of the conservation practices that we've used with growers, and we're looking at optimizing that. So, so this one really is one that we've created really for you all, the almond growers here in California, because we heard what you said and what you needed. So we worked with our specialists like Karen Lowell, who's on the call today, and our national headquarters to create opportunities um, and to use our recently revised conservation pest management system to support the use of mating disruption products for an integrated pest management program targeting navel orange worm. We know that that's important for you. The almond board, Jesse and your team were really helpful in helping us understand that. We work closely with UC Davis, um, and we talked about incentivizing what would be appropriate for the industry based on what we saw in the system and also research. We also support adoption of precision spray equipment to optimize efficient use of pesticides. We use mulch or cover crops to smother weeds and maximize infiltration of rainfall and irrigation water management. We use various vegetative plantings to support pollinators and other beneficial insects. You can see my pollinator planting in the background. And so while we are a federal agency, we want you to know that we do carry your local concerns upward in our agency to meet your needs, and we are responsive to what you tell us. And though it takes time to get things approved, in the end, we will get it done. Part of our strategic plan is Carlos Suarez, our state conservationist, has challenged us with cutting edge conservation. And so we are always looking for those ideas. I'm going to go quickly through our next slides here. Practices for air quality. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we lost Taylor. Okay, so I'm just gonna wing it. It looks like we lost Taylor. I had some really pretty pictures for you, but you already saw them with Jesse, had the practices for air quality. So in California, for us, those are low dust harvesters within designated attainment areas to address particulate matter PM. And if you're in that area, you'll receive a higher priority for those low dust harvesters. One, it's popularly called the tractor program, which is improving diesel exhaust emission and replacing those engines with like equipment powered by clean emission non-road diesel certified engines. Dust control on unpaved and surfaced areas, and whole orchard recycling. Jesse talked a little bit about that, chipping and incorporating the biomass to avoid the burning that we won't be able to do shortly. So the next one is groundwater recharge. Thank you, Jesse. There's the pretty pictures. I think, Jesse, you had that picture on your booklet. So if you grab Jesse's booklet that he shared earlier, then you can go into the details. Next is groundwater recharge. We're really excited about this one. This is brand new for us here in California. There's 2 interim standards that address this practice, and they're on a pilot basis right now. We're going to have them more widely available for cost share in the next couple years, because the first practices are being planned this summer. Talk to your conservation planning about whether those are available to you. We're working with several irrigation districts in the San Joaquin Valley right now. So ask your planner about that and how we can help you. And the last slide, second to last slide, is how do you find us? And if you don't remember anything else, know that we're here to help, helping people help the land, and how to find us. So getting started with NRCS, contact your local office to develop that plan. And then when you see a press release, or you see a tweet, or you see an email from Jesse telling you that we have a new process, then you can go into your office. You already have that relationship established. You already have the paperwork established, and you can get started on that. And then, if in case you miss one, tell your planner that you want to know about what's coming up. So thank you, Jesse. Thanks for the additional time that you've given me here. I hope I ended on time. We had a lot to share. I was really excited. And so hopefully I see a lot of good questions popping up already, and we'll be ready with Q&As when we get to that portion of the program. Thank you all for being with us today. And if you've worked with NRCS in the past, thank you for your partnership. And if you're going to be new to the agency, we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Gail, thank you so much. I really think you hit a home run with my ask about demystifying NRCS. So that's just a great explanation of how to get started and all the opportunities. Taylor has posted a document that you guys shared with us that sort of reinforces a lot of these messages about how to get started and some of the opportunities with NRCS. So again, really value our partnership with NRCS, and thanks again for the work on mating disruption. I just want to put a star by that, we work closely with NRCS. Navel orangewort is really our #1 pest, and now we have a program through NRCS that helps us to and helps growers to manage it. So thanks again.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, everyone.
Next up, we've got Paul Lum with American Farmland Trust. And Paul, really enjoy getting to know you, was out in the field with you just recently planting a pollinator hedge and an almond orchard. So as you get your slides up there, want to say that look forward to hearing about one of these programs that Gail talked about, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program grant that you've gotten. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Paul Lum.
Thank you. I'm the agricultural specialist with American Farmland Trust. Before I go on, do you see my slide in full mode?
We do.
Okay, great. Yeah, about American Farmland Trust. AFT is a national nonprofit formed in 1980, primarily to promote and develop farmland protection programs or conservation easement, and then also to promote and demonstrate sound and practical farming practices that improve soil health, store carbon, and enhance land and water resources. Last year, AFT formed the San Joaquin Valley Land and Water Conservation Collaborative, and the collaborative received a 5-year award from NRCS called the California Regional Conservation Partnership Program, or RCPP. The collaborative covers 5 counties in the San Joaquin Valley from north to south. The counties are Stanislaus, Merced, Madera, Fresno, and Tulare. And so these are our partners in the RCPP, and the RCDs from those counties are our partners listed on the slide, and including NRCS, California Farmland Trust, and 2 technology partners who are developing GIS mapping programs for us. Those partners are Conservation Biology Institute and Freshwater Trust. So the goals of the RCPP are to protect land and water resources, but I want to emphasize reduce reliance on groundwater pumping. And so that would be through funding practices or conservation practices. And then also land repurposing, which I'll talk about a little further down on our presentation, and through conservation easements. A couple other goals are expanding the staff or technical assistance staff that can help farmers implement or install practices. And thirdly, reaching underserved communities and underserved farmers. The criteria for farms and farmland to qualify for funding generally fall into 3 buckets. And again, this is consideration for reducing groundwater pumping. And that would be criteria 1 for that farm to have water supply reliability in the future, whether that's a surface water source, which is really key, that the farms are going to be an area that have some water supply reliability. Second is land with good recharge potential. Generally, that's productive farmland. And then the third, medium to high land quality. So the practices that we are funding, 15 conservation practices. The overall purpose, reducing reliance on groundwater pumping again. These are identical to NRCS EQIP practices. NRCS processes the applications, goes through the same application process steps. The payment rates are identical to EQIP rates. However, the advantage with RCPP is there's no farmer income limit, gross income limit per farmer. That is not a requirement. That is an exemption. And then the likelihood of getting funded for practices is greater. The practices fall into generally 3 categories: improving soil health, improving land management, and practices that would fall under water conveyance or on-farm recharge. So for soil health, the idea there is soil health practices that improve water holding capacity and infiltration rates. We see the list of 6 practices. Conservation cover refers to establishing vegetation, permanent vegetation in areas that are previously bare soil or bare surfaces. And cover crops on this list: reduced tillage, no-till, soil carbon amendments usually refer to compost and biochar. It also includes whole orchard recycling. And then irrigation management. These are practices that improve on-farm water use efficiency. Could be irrigation system upgrades, installation of soil sensors, weather stations, focusing on improving irrigation scheduling. Next bucket, land use enhancement practices. Critical area planning refers to permanent vegetation in areas that are degraded. So degradation perhaps due to flooding or to man-made movement of soil. So basically, improving the soil conditions in those areas. Also hedgerows, and then upland wildlife habitat management, wildlife habitat planning. These practices, I'm going to say, reduce runoff in those areas, reduce erosion, build soil health, enhance soil and wildlife diversity, capture rainfall. So definitely a land use improvement or enhancement. And the water conveyance and groundwater recharge practices. These practices, the intent is to move water perhaps from a surface supply and replace groundwater pumping with surface water. And that could be irrigation pipeline upgrades or installations, pumping plant upgrades such as adding a VFD, structure for water control, all part of water conveyance. Could also refer to moving water to different areas of the farm to improve water efficiency. And then the recharge practices direct benefit to the water table. And that's on-farm recharge or basin recharge or trench recharge. And some of these are practices that are in coordination with irrigation districts that are working on these practices. And we have a lot of information about some of the trials and some of the research on-farm recharge, in addition to Almond Board research and a lot of folks in the industry. So farm conservation plans are a part of the process for applying for practices. Um, the Get my thought here. These plans they're whole farm assessments of land and water resources and crop management at the farm level. Staff from AFT and RCD and NRCS will visit the farm, talk to the farmer, walk the ranch with the farmer, and we'll determine farm resource concerns. We'll look at drainage, soil type, crop management, the crops on the ground, and we'll recommend practices to improve soil health, um, water quality, groundwater recharge. We'll look at runoff and erosion, types of irrigation systems. Recently, I looked at an irrigation system and recommended a VFD and some repiping, and some of the practices that a farmer might not really think about. A farmer may be thinking about soil health, but we could point out other recommendations and other things through our visits. So I think these plans are really important, can be really beneficial. We'll also look at biodiversity, habitat. We might recommend, for instance, a hedgerow in an area that may be unplanted. So the plans are, again, the first step for applying for a practice. They're free of charge, and I think they're very well received from farmers. I think it's a really great resource or a value add to practice applications. Land rentals, repurposing are part of the RCP practices. The term refers to transitioning land from a high water use or intensive agriculture to a lower water use, for instance, grazing. It could also refer to what's on the list, rotational fallowing. So that might be crop production and then rotating to a fallowing year and back to crop production. Um, and or the repurposing could be transition to habitat, farmland retirement. These are prioritized for lands that are not served by irrigation districts, land that's reliant on groundwater pumping. And the term itself, it's a little bit confusing, but NRCS term land rentals, but we call it land repurposing. We don't really call it fallowing because fallowing could refer to simply an annual practice. So I'll move on to agricultural conservation easements. We are funding conservation easements. They are protecting farmland on a permanent basis, prioritizing lands with high groundwater recharge, lands that are at risk to development. The intent is to keep land in agriculture, agricultural management, and they're tailored to meet the needs of farmers and landowners, as AFTS staff that are visiting farmers and farm owners to describe the easements and process easement applications. So here are contact info. We encourage you to contact us with any questions, as well as contact your RCD or NRCS. Go into the office with questions, apply for practices as an initial step, and at least get you in the system. And do this early. Funding is limited, but now is the best time to get into the system and learn a little bit about what we're offering and get become part of that process. So my contact info in the middle, and I'll be free anytime to answer questions. Well, thank you for allowing me to present our program.
Well, thanks for coming on, and really appreciate the work you're doing on this RCPP. I think one of the best reasons to really support these types of applications is because they bring additional funds to the valley and to growers. So these are funds that you brought that are above and beyond what NRCS would have here as part of their EQIP program. So thanks again for your work and for the resources that you're providing, and then stick around for questions, and we're going to transition to our last speaker. Thanks again, Paul. And our last speaker's Trina Wally with the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District. And she's going to go over how RCDs can really be a partner, similar to how AFT is operating here in this space, and help growers to get access to NRCS resources. So Trina, are you ready and on the line? It's like you are.
Yes, but do you see my presentation?
Almost. Looks like you just got to blow it up to full screen, and there we go. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Everybody already covered all the hard topics. I don't have to talk about conservation planning or the RCPP, but I will kind of reference what everybody's already discussed. So I'm part of the group of RCDs that American Farmland Trust is working with, East Stanislaus, East Merced, Sierra Resource, and Madera Chachilla Resource Conservation Districts. And so we're part of that San Joaquin Collaborative. If you're in other places in the state, there are other RCD groups. So if you don't know who your local RCD is, I highly encourage you to seek out that information and try to make contact with them. We are your local conservation partners. So when opportunities like the RCPP program comes up, a lot of the times we're one of the entities that NRCS or other state or federal agencies will reach out to kind of try to bring together some of these projects. In fact, Gail had mentioned that they are really want feedback from our farmers and ranchers. And so one of the things that the RCDs throughout the state do is we hold local work group meetings on an annual basis. Our RCD calls it our conservation partnership meeting. It's an annual meeting where we try to bring together as many of our landowners, farmers, partners together so we can discuss some of the programs and where there's needs, so that we can turn around and give that information back to the NRCS state leadership team, so they can, as they go through their fall regrouping and bringing together new programs. And I think the groundwater recharge is probably one of those things that came about. For the longest time, groundwater was not a resource concern the NRCS addressed. And so finally they've added it to the list, and we're all very excited, especially in the Central Valley. So some of the things that RCDs do, program highlights, we're very highly involved in community programs. So whether that's helping community gardens, doing river education days, doing volunteer plantings, monarch habitat, pollinator habitat. A lot of RCDs also get very involved in riparian restoration. But really what we're here to talk today about is our agricultural programs. We've been involved in carbon farm planning with the Carbon Cycle Institute, a lot of pollinator habitat with Almond Board, Xerces, and other partners. We have irrigation programs where we go out and do the irrigation evaluations and hold irrigation water management workshops with a variety of program partners, including NRCS. Several have equipment rental programs or are in development. And then, of course, we do the conservation planning, whether that's assisting NRCS or doing CDFA sweep applications or the RCPP. And a lot of the stuff that has come along in the last several years is a lot of the RCDs started holding soil health stakeholder group meetings. And that's when we started to see a lot of the Central Valley programs come about. We now have a mobile irrigation lab in East Stanislaus RCD, and we are working on mentoring our neighboring counties in San Joaquin, Merced, and Madera to have the same. These are great tools for us to come out, collect the data, and give you a report on how your irrigation system is functioning. We hold a lot of outreach and education events, from rangeland to cover crop workshops to the irrigation water management workshops. So if there's something that you feel that your area is really in need of having more information on, please reach out to one of your RCDs, because I'm sure that they're either in the works of offering some sort of educational workshop in that area, or they would love to put one together. A lot of the time, the people that come to us for assistance, they're looking for sustainability for their next generation. They want to be able to pass on those family farms. We've also started to see a lot more people come out to us regarding market access. There's the brand new program that I hope to see come about for the carbon credits and the climate smart agriculture. But a lot of the times there's becoming more processor requirements, buyers requirements, and certification requirements. And so people are coming to us to help get their farm plans in line to meet all of those. The future market access is that ecosystem marketplace and the carbon exchange. So that's kind of one of those things where the carbon farm plans that RCDs and other partners can help ready a farm to have that information. And then, as mentioned by previous presenters, a lot of time that people are coming for funding for farm improvements, whether that's infrastructure or they're looking to increase their yields. So how our RCD came about through it is, starting with the drought resiliency through soil health back in 2014, which led us into doing some field trials with NRCS on rangeland compost application. That led us into some more carbon sequestration and doing the carbon farm plans, reduction of greenhouse gases. And ultimately, we're in that stage of where we're combining the research, implementation, and technical assistance with the conservation planning. So a lot of the programs have already been mentioned, but RCDs more than likely have at least one agreement with one of these partners to provide conservation planning, whether it's for the CDFA sweep program, the Healthy Soils program. I know for the Almond Board, the sustainability program requires irrigation evaluations done on a regular basis. We've also done applications for Department of Water Resources, Department of Conservation. Our office, and I know some of the partners that we work with are working on providing more of the conservation planning to assist in the Natural Resource Conservation Service programs, whether that's EQIP, CSP, CIC, and RCPP. And so the RCD has trained planners, or they're in the process of being trained to help our producers get their applications in order to apply for these programs. But really why I'm here is because our RCD has one of the on-farm conservation innovation grants. And so the name of this program is Soil Health Management Systems for Orchards in the California Central Valley. Again, we work with all of our neighboring RCDs. So we have orchards in Madera, Merced, Stanislaus counties. This program is funded by the USDA NRCS through their national office versus the state office, which is a lot of the times funding. What's the innovation part of this? Because of course, soil health has been around for a while now. But what they were seeing a need for is to bring together the technical assistance, the research, and the financial assistance under one program. And so the ESRCD actually accepts the applications and provides the conservation planning technical assistance and the financial assistance. But combined all of that with research. Because what we're seeing out in the field is, people know about these practices, but they want to have more data to show exactly like, how is this affecting my bottom line? So we're doing soil sampling and analysis with UC Merced. We have a contract out for the soil moisture sensors so we can monitor the water use. We have a social survey with Community Alliance with Family Farmers. American Farmland Trust is collecting the data for an economic case study. And then Xerces and the Monarch Joint Venture have been doing pollinator surveys on all of our sites. So what our sites look, so we're currently in the second year of this Conservation Innovation Grant. So last year we selected the research sites. On those research sites, we collected the baseline data last spring before any implementation was done. And then this spring, we are doing, again, another soil sampling event. But in the meantime, over the last year, we've been implementing several of our soil health practices, including reduced till, compost, soil amendment, and cover crops, as well as pollinator hedgerows. Several of the fields were able to squeeze in a pollinator hedgerow. And for the research sites, we have a treatment portion and a control portion. So we are having like side-by-side comparisons because it's coming from the same field, the same management, the same soil properties. To have side-by-side comparisons of how the orchard is going to respond to the treatment versus if you just leave it in the conventional management scenario. So I believe this is one of the first times that it's been done to this degree. We have 5 research sites collecting all of the data that I had previously mentioned. So this is ongoing. So last year we selected our research sites, and then we are adding 1,000 acres every year going forward as daughter trials. So we might not be collecting all of the intensive research, but we will be collecting some data to support whether or not the daughter trials are reacting in the same way as the main research ones. So we do accept applications year round. It's a very simple application. It comes to the ESRCD, but we do, because this is a funded program by NRCS, we do have to meet all of the same USDA NRCS requirements as if you were putting in an EQIP. So we still have to do the AGI, the cultural resource review, everything that they would have to do in a regular application. And then we do the selection in the spring for fall implementation. So we have just finished our selections for this fall's implementation, but we will be doing another selection in the spring of 2023. And of course, if you have questions or if you have ideas of how your resource conservation district could bring more conservation to the area. Maybe you've heard about a program and you're not seeing it anywhere locally, like the groundwater recharge is a great example. You can contact myself or our ag programs manager. We have lots of information about our programs on our website at eaststanrcd.org.
There we go. All right. Trina, thank you so much for that great presentation. I think all the speakers have really provided a lot for the people online, the growers online to think about, and I'm sure you have questions. Just to reiterate, topic that's come up several times, that NRCS does take suggestions. So to steal a line from one of my coworkers, if you had a magic wand, what would you like to do on your farm, and how could NRCS or any of these partners help you accomplish those? So use that as well to get your creative juices flowing. I really want to thank everybody again, and just say that I know there are a lot of acronyms. You know, we've got ABC, the Almond Board, we've got NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, RCDs, which are Resource Conservation Districts, and AFT, American Farmland Trust. But reach out to any of us. But we've also linked several resources in the chat, and all people have also provided their emails. So with that, Taylor, I think I'm going to hand it over to you to moderate the question and answer portion.
Sounds good. First one we have from is Mike Russell raised his hand early in the presentation during the NRCS segment. Mike, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question if you have not got it answered already, if you are still there. All right, we will move on for now. Mike, you can chime in if you have a question that we can fill in later. First comment was not necessarily a question, but Jesse, you might want to comment on this anyways. Someone said that groundwater recharge would be better if almond orchards had cover crops and resident vegetation during the winter. I think that makes sense with the groundwater recharge guide and some of the recommendations in there.
Certainly water infiltration is a documented benefit of using cover crops. So whether you're doing recharge or whether you're just doing flood irrigation or even micro irrigation, I think cover crops are going to help with water infiltration, including groundwater recharge. And then, you know, the other thing is that there are these additional co-benefits of doing cover crops. Pollinators have come up several times. The Almond Board, along with Pollinator Partnership, is working to develop another resource really to help almond growers navigate some of these tough planting decisions around hedgerows. So just keep an eye out for that in the future as well. So in addition to water infiltration and recharge, or also have those pollinator benefits of cover crops and nutrient benefits, along with that whole list that was on my slide.
A question in the chat that was answered earlier by both Robert and Karen. I think a lot of growers might have a question about this is, do off-ground harvesters currently fit into any of the available incentives? Again, I know Karen, you answered this, and Rob, you provided a link, but if you guys want to chime back in and answer that question so everyone can hear.
Sure. I think what we do is when there is a new piece of equipment that growers think help them address a conservation concern, a lot of times it's dust generated in the harvest process. We have to go through a process of getting particular equipment approved, but the core message that I would share with the folks on the line today is, if there's something that you think will address your objectives, just bring it to your planner's attention. If it's not currently on the list, what we can do is initiate a process of internal review and see if we can get it added if it's not already there. And what I tried to say in the comments is, you know, folks who are actually growing things are the ones that are adapting fast and furious. And so we rely on the customers to let us know what would be of benefit to them. And then we work it through our own review process. And a lot of times things come forward from that. And a good example is we had people come into our office all the time asking for puffers. And So we moved towards getting more information and eventually worked with lots of different folks in UCIPM, Jesse and Drew, who used to be an entomologist, Gabrielle Ludwig, and got opportunities to support mating disruption for now. So bring it to us and we will do the best we can to get you support for what you see as a need in your operations. We have to be candid. It takes a little time to get through that process. Jesse is smiling. So bring them forward and make a cup of tea. Yeah.
I think that's Karen Lowell. She's our area agronomist in our Central Coast offices. Karen is also nationally renowned in her field, and so we just feel so lucky to have her as a part of our team here. And I would say, just to give even a high level talk about this, NRCS, the line we try to walk as an agency is 1 foot in this innovation. Like, farmers are the original innovators. We have to be there with you. You're going to see a lot of things before we see them. And 1 foot in this proven science piece, right? So if you're going to, one of the reasons it's taken us, for example, on groundwater recharge so long to get that practice going is, we try to make sure that there's not unintended consequences, right? And the earth and the cycle and the ground and the land, it just takes a while to kind of test those out. So we work really closely. USDA was created to have, that flow from the land grant universities and through extension and then to the on-farm one-on-one assistance to the payment levels with FSA. And so, if you know where to plug into the system, that helps. But just know that when we give you a practice, there's a lot of science behind it and a lot of thought. And we're trying to do the best job we can. And if we can't, then we can retool, but it just takes us a little bit to do that. Thank you.
Gail, another question in the comments earlier was, is it possible for a grower to know where they stand within the ranking process when those are ranked?
So this is $1 million question, and we had a lot of chat about it. I'm going to have Rob Roy come on. Rob works in our Central Valley offices, and Rob is deep into the process of ranking, rating, getting those questions, how we turn around. The short answer is to keep in touch with your planner, your conservation planner. My dad always says to me, "I love my conservation planner," and we hope you feel the same. And so, they're really going to have the nitty gritty for you in particular. So, Rob, you want to handle that? And then I'll tell them the fun thing we're thinking about as an agency.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Gail. Yeah, sure. Just as Gail said, stay in contact with the planner you work with, or, somebody there at that field office, and, ask them about the batching or selection dates, because, when you do get selected for funding, you get a call really quick. But if you remain in that batch and we didn't quite have enough money to get to you, that money may come later in the year, but we realize it kind of leaves you hanging there if you're not knowing what's going on. So yeah, by all means, ask about those selection dates, and then maybe mark it in your calendar if you don't hear from them by then, to give your planner a call and just stay in touch with them. That's my best advice.
Rob, and because it's a number system, every plan generates a number, that kind of bounces around as people come in and go out. So it's not an exact science. A couple good places to learn about NRCS if you don't want 10,000 emails. Follow us on Twitter. It's the only social media they allow us to use. And our press releases, you can go in at the bottom of the press release or into our website under our news releases, and just for California. I'm not sure the national releases are going to help you very much. And there's a place on the bottom where you can sign up just so you can keep track of those deadlines. And then we always try to tell, like, Jesse and our partners, so that they can share that information too. But I want to tell you something fun that we're thinking about. This is kind of out there a little bit, but issue, where am I in the ranking system? Oh, and farmers.gov is another good one, and that's all USDA. But where am I in the ranking system? We've kind of been talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could get like a Domino's pizza tracker for you all that, you know, here you applied for the, you know, we made your pizza, we did your plan. So I know that's kind of silly maybe, but I think it's what you are all asking for. It is something that we're thinking about in the leadership level, that we need to be responsive to you in some way. And, you know, not to dispirit you, but we right now can fund about 1 in every 3 applications we receive, give or take, depending on which fund pool and some of those. So, you know, that's why you need to start with the plan, start early. And then these partners are great, like Trina and Paul talked about. I see one from Blue Diamond in here. You know, it doesn't always have to be, you know, the NRCS funding these things if you all know what you want to do. That's kind of how it works. And sorry, it's so vague, but also, and Rob, I think we kind of talked about, like, once you get into the system and you get your plan developed, we try to keep you informed and rolling over in the system. But like a lot of folks, we have a lot of turnover. So sometimes you have to help us help you. So just keep with that information and realize that sometimes your planner might leave, and just stay in communication, please. Thank you.
Another question in the chat is from Robert Holterman. He asked if there's any NRCS program specifically now or in the works that'll fund irrigation automation.
Thank you. So I wasn't quite clear in my my talking points. I said timers, but I meant sensors for timing for irrigation water management. So Ha Trong is one of our engineers. We're really proud of our engineer corps that we have in NRCS, and it is free. So that's a big service. So Ha's going to clean me up here. Ha, do you want to talk about what you guys are thinking and what's in the future for this?
Yeah, sure, Gail. Thanks. Yeah, we understand the automation is technologies out there. The issue we have is that you know, when we come in and add a structure or valves or something on top of an existing system, we're not sure how it was installed and stuff. So we currently are working on it, how we can come about to create the scenarios for automation to add on top of what we're doing right now. So yeah, it's in the works. But to answer your question about what current program we have right now that can help, Gail mentioned about the CSP, the Conservation Stewardship Program. There's a couple of enhancements there under irrigation water management that you can incorporate, adding like a weather station, and on top of that, you can add new controller and valves and along with that enhancement. So that's a possibility. But once again, just contact the planner in the field office. Talk to the planner. What you're looking to work on, and what you're trying to achieve, and go from there. But currently, right now in the state office and the engineering state office, we are working on the automation part, but we just don't have a clear answer yet on which direction we want to go with. Is it under the irrigation system, or it's going to go toward more like a management that we feel like the automation will help with the management part? So it's in the works right now. So just kind of hang in there. We have something that a draft form that we're working on right now for FY23, but it's not something that we can share yet. But I just want to let you know that we're aware of it, and we're working on it.
Thanks. And maybe Trina wants to talk a little bit again about the mobile irrigation labs. That's amazing, Trina. Do you want to, anything you want to add there?
Well, it's a great thing to have done, because where you might think that everything's going fine because from the appearances it looks fine, when you're able to dig in and collect the flow data and the pressure data and everything else, we've actually found some very big problems in the field that the growers had no idea about. And so it's a great way to increase your efficiency without having to do the infrastructure improvements per se. For example, just to throw it out there, but we had a grower who had a brand new system put in the irrigation company was like, okay, this is how the system works. You throw it on for 24 hours once a week, you're good. But he was having some, stressed trees in his field. And so we went out, we did all of the irrigation evaluations, and his system was working excellent. However, he was on gravelly loam soil. And so all of that, most of the water he was applying once a week was going right through his soil profile because the soil did not have the water holding capacity. And so those are things that the irrigation evaluation looks at. It's looking at the efficiency of the system, but also all of the parameters like the soil health and everything that goes into your efficient use of water.
That looks like all of the questions. Oh, wait, we have one more. NRCS in Butte County is where? There's an online resource where you can find your local FSA offices, right, Gail? Looks like you're still muted, Gail.
Okay, sorry. One of the bugaboos of Teams. Taylor posted a fact sheet that we developed just for you guys. Kind of a prize for coming to the talk today. And we have the offices and the phone numbers in every single county on the list. But yeah, typically FSA and NRCS are co-located together. So if you know where FSA is, you should be able to grab NRCS. And I don't know my counties as well as I should. Let's see. Is anybody off the top of their head? Butte County.
Karen and Robert have both answered the question in the chat.
Okay, great. Yay, yay, team. But yeah, there's a fact sheet and you can print it out and it's got all the offices and the phone numbers. Thank you.
Taylor, maybe if I could just say, I think, and maybe this is a question for you, Gail. I know a lot of almond growers have come into the FSA system in the last few years as part of either trade or COVID mitigation. Is that going to help them with their NRCS, getting started with NRCS?
Yeah, in that paperwork piece that I talked about, I know how much paperwork that took. My family went through that, but yeah, that should help identify some of that. I think some of the paperwork's going to be a little bit different. But Rob or Karen, do you have any knowledge of the exact translation between those paperwork that they had to do for the COVID work versus some of the land eligibility that we'll need to do? Because I don't remember having to do like a 1026 for the COVID money, but maybe my brother did. Anyway, it'll help get you started.
It'll help get you in the door. Well, I think we're pretty much at time. And again, I just want to thank all the speakers. I really appreciate it. The smile on my face is because NRCS has been so responsive and such a great partner. We've really, I think, made a lot of progress. We've got a practice standard that can help with navel orangeworm. We've now got a new groundwater recharge practice standard. We've got low dust, and maybe in the future we could have incentives for off-ground harvest as well. And of course, all these great soil health practices that all the partners are really focused on. So want to thank everybody again, and just invite you to follow up with any of us to find out more, and visit your local NRCS field office to get started, or reach out to Paul or Trina or myself.
Thank you all. Thank you, growers. We just so appreciate everything you do every day.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending the Training Tuesdays. This was the second year of the webinar series. It's on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. You can visit almonds.com/events for more information. The next Training Tuesday will be on May 3rd, and it'll be about aflatoxins and pre-export checks. And the information is not quite up on the website, but it should be soon at that address, almonds.com/events. Thank you very much and have a good rest of the week.